Red wristbands handed out to asylum seekers in Wales are to be replaced by photo ID cards after claims that they led to people becoming targets for abuse. It follows complaints that homes for refugees in Middlesbrough had red doors. We were joined now from North London by the author and campaigner Caroline Criado Perez, and from our central London studio by Raheem Kassam, who's editor-in-chief of Breitbart in London. Caroline, this was never a good idea, was it? I wonder how it came about.
No, it's clearly not a good idea. I can't imagine how anyone passed this, how anyone thought that this was going to be okay, and I'm really pleased that they've, come to their senses and realised that this is not an acceptable way to treat people who are flying from war zones and looking for refuge. But it's not really. In a way, it's not really a surprise because we've always dehumanised asylum seekers. This is just one in a long line of ways in which we treat asylum seekers as less than, people, the rest of the people in the UK. We incarcerate them in detention centres, and these are people who might be.
Clarify what you mean by
these are people who could be pregnant or who have. Well, that's what I'm trying to explain at the moment. So, for example, the way in which we detain people who, women who are pregnant or people who have been victims of torture, that goes specifically against UN guidelines. Similarly, the way in which we don't allow them even to volunteer. It's one thing not to allow someone to work. We give them a certain amount of money, but not enough to live on, and that is actually being cut right now. And it only comes on payment cards, so they have to go to specific shops. In every way you look at it, the way in which we treat human asylum seekers is that they are a special type of person who need to be marked out, who need to be treated with less than just general courtesy and decency. I remember recently reading about the monkey that gets put on someone who gives someone who passes someone's asylum claim. There's a thing called the asylum monkey, which is some sort of way of mocking the person who has been stupid enough to grant asylum to someone, who's been stupid enough to believe the claims of someone who's come here seeking refuge. So I do think that the wristbands are a terrible idea. I think that you don't really need to be much of a history buff to see how these kinds of ways of treating people, how badly they can go. But it's all par for the course in a way.
OK, we should say, of course, that the organisation has changed its mind. But let me bring in Raheem Kassam now. Was this just a bit of process, that this was a way of making sure people got to that which were they entitled, in other words, a bit of food, and it was a rather clumsy way of bringing that about?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a service provider that has been asked, on a dime to provide lodging and food and get all this stuff done very quickly and very cheaply by the Home Office. And the quickest and cheapest thing that they came up with to identify people were these wristbands. Are the wristbands a good idea? Probably not. But I mean, the idea of detention and all this and all these sort of weird guilt words that we hear thrown in our faces all the time, 24/7, about how we treat people coming into this country. Sky News had a very good interview up about an hour ago with a chap who was at the Links House in Cardiff, and he was complaining that he gets 3 meals a day and 2 of them are the same meal every day. Well, there are some people in this country who have paid into the system all their lives who don't get 3 square meals a day, let alone having the same 2. We're actually really generous to people. Even people who come to this country illegally, we are generous to. Some might even say over generous to. And I'm not going to be dictated to. And the people of this country don't want to be dictated to by the United Nations or the European Commission. The same organisations, by the way, that fund the campaigners who are complaining about this today. It's a PR stunt. And actually, we should be disgusted that we're being made to feel bad that these people have free accommodation while they've entered the country illegally.
Caroline?
Well, I think it's very telling that he says, well, they've entered the country illegally, the assumption there being that asylum seekers are not genuine. I actually think we should be ashamed.
Do you think 100% are?
I don't think that we should be. You just made out that 100% are by saying these people who enter the country illegally. I think we
Hold
actually
on, look at the news reports today.
Look at the news reports
from Links House.
Hang on, look, why don't you,
excuse
me, can you let me finish? Because I just let you finish, thank you. So, we are detaining people who are victims of torture, right? The amount of damage that is going to do to someone has been repeatedly documented. And the other thing is, you know, the idea that somehow we should drag everyone down to a level because some people aren't eating well, therefore other people shouldn't eat well. Everyone should be able to eat well. I don't think the answer to some people having a poor quality of life is to make sure that other people have a lesser quality of life. I think the clear answer to that is make sure that everyone has an adequate quality of life. And I would challenge anyone to be able to survive on £34 a week, where you can only go to specific shops and have an adequate quality of life.
But Caroline, is it not important for the rest of the population who are being asked to welcome these people into the country that the process is fair and appropriate?
Absolutely, the process should be fair and appropriate. And that is exactly what I think we're calling for by saying probably don't mark people out with wristbands, probably don't mark their doors with red, probably give them enough food so that they can actually survive, maybe allow them to volunteer. I mean, I find that one of the most baffling regulations, that people aren't allowed to volunteer. Why on earth not? If they want to give something back to the community, why would we stop them from doing that?
You're shaking your head, Raheem. You don't agree?
It's just so naive. I mean, you know, the idea that these people have had their doors painted red intentionally. You know, if you're a service provider to the government and you're asked, you know, can you get these properties in order for us as quickly as possible, then do you go out and buy 30 different types of paint, or do you buy one type of paint because it keeps your costs low and you can do it really quickly? It's so childish and pathetic, this argument that we're having. Look, I actually am in agreement with Caroline on the fact that these people are not being made to work for what they're getting back from the British taxpayer. But at the same time, let's not forget that these are people whose asylum claims are being processed. You can't allow them to work and get jobs. What you should be doing is looking at how they can contribute to their own lodging, you know, how they can contribute to the food that they're getting. You know, that's what we should be looking at right now, because yes, the problem that we see here today with this story is that they're complaining, these migrants are complaining that they're being abused for the wristbands that they're wearing. They're not being abused for the wristbands that they're wearing. Some people are abusing them anecdotally because they are crowding around outside Link's house on a main street doing nothing all day but waiting for their meals and smoking. You can look at the news reports on this. I'm not making this up. This is what's happening. Now, I don't think they should be getting abused at all. You know, that's wrong. But at the same time, let's not pretend that a little wristband is what's making people, you know, angry about this situation. People are angry because they are struggling to put food on their tables, and these people are being given free food and accommodation.
Raheem Kassam and Caroline Criado Perez, thank you both for your contributions. We're going to have to leave our conversation there.